Hi, good morning to all. Welcome to this course on network theory, ECT 205. It's a common course for both third semester electronics and communication engineering students as well as applied electronics and instrumentation. So, as an introduction, I would like to discuss about the relevance of this course and the need of circuit theory or network theory, why one has to learn network theory, etc. So, we know in general, an electrical network is an interconnection of different circuit elements in a closed path. The circuit elements can be active or passive. So we know that an active element can be a voltage source or a current source, or can be devices like BJTs, and passive elements are essentially resistors, capacitors and inductors, etc. So if you are connecting all these different types of elements in a closed path, you can call it as a circuit or a network. So network theory discusses on various rules and theorems to support the simplification of the circuit analysis. So what exactly is circuit analysis? So as an engineer, most oftenly we have to find out the voltage across 2 points or the current through a particular branch of the circuit, or maybe the impedance or resistance across 2 points of a circuit. So this sort of an analysis could be made easier with the support of network theory. So we can see an instance of circuit analysis. Let us see this small circuit. This is having a voltage source of 10 volt and two parallel branches. One is of 3 kilo ohms and the other one is of 6 kilo ohms. So in this kind of a circuit, it is a simple circuit, and we could solve this circuit by simply using Ohm's law. So we know that suppose if you want to find the current through this 3 kilo ohm branch, we know that the voltage across 3 kilo ohm is 10 volt itself. So the current will be that will be 10 by 3 kilo ohms. And similarly, the voltage across 6 kilo ohm is also 10 volt because they are in parallel. These two resistors are in parallel with 10 volt. So the current through 6 kilo ohm is 10 volt by 6 kilo ohm. So the simple Ohm's law is enough to get this sort of information. So we can find out the currents flowing through 6 kilo ohm resistor as well as 3 kilo ohm resistor in this case. So this is quite easy. A back of the envelope kind of calculation is sufficient enough, right? But suppose if you are having a circuit, maybe slightly more complex circuit as shown in the bottom of this slide, the simple Ohm's law may not be sufficient. You can use some other supportive laws and rules and theorems that could make your jobs more easier. So that is the relevance of this course, or that is the relevance of network theory. So as we discussed, network theorems do support the ease of circuit analysis. This is making one's job more simpler. It is essentially built upon Ohm's law, or in a way you can call it as an extension of Ohm's law. So in general, this is applicable to linear bilateral circuits. Later I will discuss about linear bilateral circuits in future slides. And basically you can classify into elements in different manner. You can classify them as active elements and passive elements, as I mentioned earlier, linear elements and non-linear elements. You can call them, you can classify them as bilateral elements and unilateral elements. So let us see the difference between active elements and passive elements. So active elements are essentially circuit elements which could deliver power to other elements in the circuit, or it could be able to increase or decrease the level of power signal. So in that way, you can say a voltage source as an active element because it is able to deliver some power to the circuit element connected with a voltage source. Similarly, a current source is also an active element that can pump some current, that can deliver some power to the device or resistor or capacitor connected to it. Even BJT can also called as an active element because it can modify your signal which you are giving as the input of a BJT based circuit. So all these different types of components like voltage sources, current sources, BJTs or MOSFETs, op amps, operational amplifiers are termed as active elements. But in the case of passive elements, they cannot deliver any amount of energy or power to a circuit element connected to it. However, they can absorb power. That means these elements either dissipate power in the form of heat or store energy in the form of either magnetic field or electric field. We know that a resistor is a dissipating element. So whenever you are pumping a current through a resistor, it will dissipate energy. In a similar way, if you are driving a current through a capacitor, it will store energy in the form of electrostatic field. An inductor, on the other hand, when you are energizing an inductor, it will store energy in the form of magnetic field. So these elements, resistors, capacitors or inductors, they cannot deliver any power by themselves to some other elements in the circuit. So these elements are known as passive elements. Now let us see about linear and non-linear elements. So by definition, a linear element is one that show a linear relationship between voltage and current. Examples are resistors, inductors, capacitors, etc. So all these elements are showing a linear characteristic between voltage and current. On the other hand, non-linear elements are those that do not show a linear relationship between voltage and current. So we are quite familiar with the characteristics of a diode or BJT. If you are looking at the characteristics, they are not straight lines, they are not linear. So these elements you could say as non-linear elements. Let us see some more details of linear elements. For example, the first component, first element, resistor. We can write I is equal to a function of V. We are quite familiar with this equation. I is a function of V, that is equal to V by R, 1 by R into V. So if you are trying to plot this relationship between voltage and current, the graph will look like this, as you can see on the right side of the presentation. I am plotting V as an independent variable along x-axis and I along y-axis. So definitely if I am plotting various current values for respective voltages, I could get a straight line as shown in this graph, and of course the slope of the straight line will be 1 by R. So exactly you can see that in our equation I as a function of V, that is V by R. So it is quite evident that this relationship is linear because the characteristic curve is a straight line which is passing through the origin. So in order to check the linearity of a device or a system in general, there are two things. One is the scaling property and the other one is additivity property. So scaling property means, suppose I am increasing my input, I am scaling my input, a corresponding scaling should be there in the output. Suppose in this case, suppose I am increasing my voltage as 5 times, the current could be also increased 5 times. Suppose I am increasing my voltage as k times in general, the current will increase k times. So if the input is multiplied by a constant, then the output is also multiplied by the same constant. Then you can say the device is having scaling or homogeneity property. So this is one of the conditions for an element to be a linear one. The second important property is additivity property. So suppose I am giving an input V1, then the corresponding response is I1, that is nothing but 1 by R into V1. And in the next time I am giving an input V2, and the response could be I2, 1 by R into V2. And then if I am giving the sum of inputs, the sum of earlier inputs as the single input in the third time, that is V1 plus V2 if I am giving, then the output will be 1 by R into V1 plus V2. That is actually the sum of earlier responses. So additivity property requires that the response to a sum of inputs is the sum of the responses to individual inputs applied separately. So these two properties together, that is scaling property and additivity property, suppose these two properties are obeyed by a particular element, you can say that element is a linear element. And these two properties together, we usually call it as principle of superposition. So if an element obeys principle of superposition, you can say that element is a linear element. Both capacitors and inductors are also linear elements. Both of them are obeying the earlier mentioned properties, that is scaling as well as additivity. And also you could see the characteristic curve. Suppose if I am plotting a characteristic curve between dV by dt along x-axis and I along y-axis, the curve will be a straight line passing through the origin. And for an inductor, same is the case. If I am plotting di by dt along x-axis as an independent variable and v along y-axis as a dependent variable, again the curve will be a straight line, slope will be equal to L. So both these elements are obeying additivity as well as scaling, or you could say these elements are obeying principle of superposition. So these elements are linear elements. So capacitor, inductor, resistor, etc. are all linear elements. Now let us see the case of a diode, a PN junction diode. We are quite familiar with the characteristic curve of a diode. You can see the forward characteristics of the diode. The diode is almost off till it is reaching the knee voltage. When your input is crossing knee voltage, that is 0.7 volt for silicon and 0.3 volt for germanium, then only the device will become on. So till that time the device is almost in the off condition. The current which is flowing through the device will be very low value, maybe very low order of microamperes or maybe even in nanoamperes. Suppose I am giving an input voltage as a first instance. I am giving an input voltage as 0.4 volt for a silicon diode. You know, since it is less than knee voltage, the current will be very minimal. One could say that is around 100 nanoamperes, right? And then suppose I am doubling my input, that is I am making 0.4 volt as 0.8. Then what will happen? The device is in the fully on condition, that will pass a high current, right? That current could be in the order of milliamperes. So the increase in current, when I am doubling my input, the increase in current is not just doubling, it is doubling, it is increasing in a different order in fact. So scaling is not obeyed by this particular device. Similar is the case with additivity also. So the device is not obeying scaling property and additivity property. So you could say diode is a non-linear element, and that is quite evident in the voltage current characteristic also. So it is not straight line, even though in this picture it is almost straight line, but it is not straight line, as we know that is an exponential curve. So the device is not a linear element, even though one could operate the diode in a very small region in its characteristic curve, assuming that as a linear region, that is possible. But in general, or in common practice, this is not a linear element. Similar is the case with a BJT. BJT is also not a linear element because its voltage current characteristics is not linear. MOSFET is also not a linear element. So these kind of devices are non-linear elements. Another important classification of elements is basically bilateral and unilateral. So this is based on the direction of current flow. In a bilateral, as the name suggests, the elements will allow the current in both directions and offer the same impedance. So if that is the case, you could say that element as a bilateral element. For example, if you are using a resistor, right, the current will be same even though you are just flipping the resistor in your circuit. There is no change. So the resistance offered will also not changing even though you are changing the direction of the device, right? So resistor is an example of bilateral element. Similar is the case with an inductor and a capacitor. But look at the case of a diode. Suppose I am just changing the direction of current in a diode. We know that won't become on. So diode will conduct the current only in a particular direction. So there is a directional property for a diode. So it will conduct current only through in a particular direction, right? If you are reverse biasing the diode, it won't conduct any current. So a diode is a unilateral element. So what I would like to say is that all our network theorems are applicable only for linear bilateral circuit elements. So it is in general not applicable to unilateral elements as well as not applicable to non-linear elements. It is only applicable for linear bilateral circuit elements. Now let us have a quick look on different types of sources which are used in networks. One classification is basically independent sources and dependent sources. As name suggests, independent sources produce fixed values of voltage or current, and these are not dependent on any other circuit parameters, especially the load connected. But in the case of a dependent source, that produce the amount of voltage or current that is dependent on some other voltage or current, that's dependent. So this kind of sources are also known as controlled sources. Let us have a look on independent voltage source. So an independent voltage source, as we just mentioned, produces a constant voltage irrespective of the load connected across it. So as this figure shows, the terminal voltage is Vs for a particular voltage source. And suppose I am connecting a load, maybe a load which is taking 1 ampere current, right? Still I will get a voltage as Vs. Suppose I am putting another load which is taking only 100 milliamperes. Again, the voltage will be the same, that is Vs. So if you are looking on the voltage current characteristics, what will be the current supplied by the voltage source, what will be the current taken by the load, the voltage across the terminals will be same. But one important point is that this is an ideal case, that is your voltage current characteristics is a straight line horizontal to the current axis, that is x-axis, is an ideal case. That is, this kind of sources do not exist practically, because there is some internal series resistance with each and every voltage source. So this is only an ideal case. Let us look on the practical voltage source. So this is the case of a practical independent voltage source, because a practical source is always having its own very small series resistance value. So the terminal voltage, you can write the terminal voltage equation as Vs minus the drop across the series resistance, that is Vs minus I into Rs. That will be the measured voltage across the terminals. Suppose your load is taking more current, then what will happen? The voltage drop across the series resistance will increase. We will get only the remaining voltage as the output voltage across the terminals. So output voltage is always V equal to Vs minus I into Rs. So that's why there is a violation of characteristic curve from the ideal case. You can see the voltage, if you are plotting a characteristic curve between I and V, that will be a straight line, but it is not parallel to the x-axis. It will be a slanted or a straight line with a slope. So this is the case with a practical voltage source. Similarly, if you are looking the current source, an independent current source, in an ideal case, it will supply a constant current irrespective of the load resistance. Whatever be the load resistance, it will supply the constant current. This is also an ideal case, assuming that the resistance or the impedance which is existing across the source is infinite. On that assumption only you can plot a curve of this shape. So if there are some finite internal resistance for this current source, the characteristic curve won't be like this. It will be again a straight line which will be having a slope. Let us see that case in the next slide. So regarding dependent sources, as we mentioned, the terminal voltage will be a function of voltage or current which is flowing through some other branches. For example, a dependent voltage source can be of two types. One is voltage dependent voltage source and current dependent voltage source. That means the terminal voltage will depend upon a voltage which is existing in some other branch. Similarly, a current dependent voltage source means the voltage measured across the terminals will depend upon the current through some other branches. And dependent current source again can be classified into two, that is voltage dependent current source and current dependent current source. That means a voltage dependent current source will produce a current depend upon the voltage across some other branches. Similarly, a current dependent current source will act as a current source, and that current will be proportionate to the current which is flowing through some other branches in the circuit. So that is a current dependent current source. You can one example of current dependent current source, you can say you are quite familiar with bipolar junction transistors. So the collector current of a bipolar junction transistor is actually controlled by the base current. So you can say that is a current controlled or current dependent current source. If we are assuming that collector current as a source, if we are taking the collector current as a source, that current is actually a function of base current. So that is a controlled current source. So that's an example of current controlled or current dependent current source. So these are the four different types of dependent sources. Now let us have a look on the source transformation. So one can easily convert a current source into a voltage source and vice versa. For example, in the first figure, you can see left side there is a voltage source. That's a practical voltage source which is having a small series resistance Rs. So you can convert this as a current source. What you have to do is you can find out the current which can be produced by this kind of a source by shorting the terminals. That is, current will be then Vs by Rs. So that you can put as the source in the right side, and the Rs value, that is series resistance of the voltage source, you have to put as a shunt here in the current source. So you can see the voltage source is transformed to an equivalent current source. So the Is value will be Vs by Rs. Similarly, if you are having a current source with a parallel resistance Rs, the equivalent voltage source will be Vs and a series resistance Rs, where Vs is equal to Is into Rs. So if you are having a current source, you can convert that into an equivalent or a voltage source which is having the same effect. Similarly, if you are having a voltage source, you can convert that into a current source also.